Senator John Thune, the South Dakota senator, Senate Minority Whip, with us right now. He is backing Tim Scott, the South Carolina senator, for that top job. Senator Thune with us right now. Senator, always good to have you.
Hey, Neil.
What do you make of this crowded field?
It seems like there are a lot of candidates who sense an opening there. I don't know what that says about the front runners in the pack, but clearly there are a number of candidates who are entering this race under the assumption that it's a wide open race. So we'll see. I mean, you know, how much any of these candidates get traction. I think there will probably be a breakout moment or two somewhere along the way, maybe in one of the debates, but I certainly hope that Tim Scott is one of those breakout candidates. I think he provides a wonderful alternative for Republicans around the country. But there are lots of other good candidates that are entering the race, and we'll see where it all goes, Neil. I guess that's why, you know, they pay you guys the big bucks is to cover all this stuff.
You know, I just found out the other anchors here, Senator, were paid, and I am so annoyed. But I digress.
Yeah.
You know, Senator, you're one of the few people not running for president right now. Looking at the crowd as you see it, do you ever feel tempted in your inner thoughts? Man, I'm better than these guys.
Well, you know, John McCain always famously said that every senator wakes up in the morning, looks in the mirror, and sees a future president, and the only thing that cures that is embalming fluid. But I'm not somebody who aspires to that job, certainly not at the moment, but there are good people who do. And I'm glad that there are people entering the race who have a deep passion for this country, a deep passion to make a difference. And like I said, I hope that some of them can get some traction out there. And of course, in my view, I'd love to see Tim Scott be that guy.
If I can digress and talk a little bit about this student loan thing back and forth here. There are a lot of the conservatives, Freedom Caucus members, not all Freedom Caucus, but some of the more vocal ones, very ticked off that kind of continues a little bit. It might have been a signal on the part of Kevin McCarthy that waiting for the Supreme Court to weigh on this. But some of them want his head, some of them want him out. What do you think of all this?
I think that you're talking about you know, what they did in the bill last week.
Right.
They at least ended the moratorium on repayment of these loans, which is a step in the right direction. Now, hopefully, the Supreme Court maybe
they didn't stop the other parts, which
Correct.
I think you're just referring now. What the Supreme Court will take up and continue.
Yes, and we hope that that decision is coming soon, maybe as early as tomorrow, and I'm hoping that that wipes everything out, because I think this was an unconstitutional power grab on the part of the administration that literally transfers the debt from the 87 or 13% of the people in this country who have student loans to the 87% who don't. And this was a political move on the part of this administration, I think, designed to buy votes. And in the end, I hope that the Supreme Court does what it should do, and that is to wipe this out and force the administration and people in this country, again, who, the 13% who are being subsidized by the 87% of American taxpayers who don't have student loans, to start paying them back. I think it sends all the wrong signals, and clearly this was something that, in my view, not only it exacerbates inflation, clearly adds to the debt, maybe upwards of $1 trillion if his policies were allowed to fully be implemented. And also it creates incentives for people to take on more debt if they think they're not going to have to pay back the debt that they already owe. I think this is totally wrong, and I hope the Supreme Court finds that to be the case, and that decision is coming soon.
You know, many come back, and some of these candidates who are running for president are come back and say, well, some of our leaders in this race, like Donald Trump, and there are fine ones to talk about getting debt under control and doing all of that. It ballooned even pre-COVID under his presidency. So who's to say that even a Republican president, even working with a Republican Senate and/or House, is ever going to get a handle on this?
It's going to take a good amount of political courage, and ideally it would happen at a time of divided government, but that seems unlikely. And Donald Trump, of course, has said he's not going to touch Social Security or Medicare. Those programs and a few others constitute about 70% of all federal spending. So if you take that off the table and you take defense off the table, you know, that leaves you a 15% to actually find savings, and that's the challenge that they had in the House of Representatives with the bill that they passed last week and that we passed in the Senate. They did a good job of actually starting to bend the spending curve down. You know, they did it without raising taxes, without creating new programs, and you know, found $1.5 trillion in savings. But to really balance the budget, Neil, to really deal with the debt and the deficit, we have to figure out ways to make some of these the mandatory part of the federal budget, that 70% of federal spending that is pretty much untouchable. We've got to figure out ways to make those programs sustainable and to reform them and to make them cost less. That's what we've got to do on the spending side, and obviously on the revenue side, get the economy growing at a faster rate, have pro-growth policies that increase investment, and when people are investing and the economy is growing and expanding, they're taking realizations and they're paying taxes, and tax revenues go up. It's going to take both, but it's going to take a president who is willing to lead on this issue, and this one isn't. I hope that we have one in the future, starting in January of 2025, that is, because otherwise this runaway debt that continues to explode, $31 trillion and growing, is just going to choke us, you know, purely in the amount of interest that we have to pay to finance it.
Yeah, I always tell my kids it's on you guys. Dad's checking out, but maybe you're right. We'll see how that goes. Senator, thank you very much.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Neil.
John Thune in our nation's capital. Let's go to Taylor Riggs right now.